Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Fearless Friday chat. I am Chalessa Reddy, and I am so excited to be with you once again this week. We've been talking the last several weeks about race, fear, and how to move forward. Last week, I had Wade Jones, Marcus Reddy, Antonio Patterson with me, and they were sharing from their perspective some things that they've experienced, some encouragement that they had in terms of moving forward. And so I wanted to continue that same dialogue with some very special guests this week. I have my very own sister, Coletta Patterson, and her oldest daughter, Olivia Patterson. We have Amelia Jones, who is my other niece, Wade Jones's daughter. And then I have Giselle Reddy, who is my oldest daughter. And finally, but certainly not least, we have Mima, also known as Mama, but she is the mother of Coletta and myself. And so we're just excited to be here because this spans three generations. Wanted to share different perspectives as it relates to the current race conversation, and certainly wanted to hear their thoughts and their encouragement as we try to move forward in these moments. So, without further ado, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about growing up in Northwest Arkansas.
I'm Coletta Patterson, Shalessa's sister, and I moved to Northwest Arkansas in seventh grade, so junior high, and we moved from Memphis, Tennessee, after my dad took a job at the university. So in Memphis, going to school was pretty much black and white was about 50-50. So moving to Northwest Arkansas, it was about 98 to 98% Caucasian and about 2% black. So it was a very different environment that took us a while to kind of get adjusted to, especially when you're already a teenager and trying to find your place and fit in. So that was kind of my experience to Northwest Arkansas. Going to high school at Springdale High School, being the second black female to graduate from there in the early or the late 90s. And just, lots of different experiences from walking in the mall to people just, following us around, staring at us, trying to figure out who we were and who is this new black family and, what is your hair like and how often do you wash it? And what kind of things do you eat? Do you all eat fried chicken, watermelon? So there was just endless questions about who black people were. And you always felt like you had to speak for black people. And so you're trying to navigate that while you're also a teenager. So that was a little bit of the experience moving from Northwest Arkansas, moving from Memphis and growing up in Northwest Arkansas.
I'm Olivia Patterson. I'm 14 and going into my sophomore year at Haas Hall Academy. And I lived in Kosciuszko until I was 9, and then I moved here to Northwest Arkansas right before my 5th grade year. And I kind of shared the same experience as my mom. Kosciuszko was about 50% black, 50% white. And I just remember coming to Northwest Arkansas and I was just like, where are the black people at, because I was just so used to seeing them around. But eventually I think I got used to that. But it's like you're driving around like Walmart or something and you see a black person walk out of a store in Northwest Arkansas and you're just like, wow, like it's a black person. So I think that was mostly my experience. I also got a lot of questions about my hair too. Everyone wanted to play with my hair because I used to have my hair relaxed, and like if you would like play with it, it would just stick straight out. And so like all my friends wanted to just play with my hair, and then I went natural and everyone was pretty shocked with that, I think. So that's kind of how I've grown up.
Amelia.
I'm Amelia Jones. I'm 18. I'll be going to the University of Arkansas this fall. And I've always been in Northwest Arkansas, lived in Springdale all my life. And I've had a similar experience growing up. There weren't that many like mixed people for sure in Northwest Arkansas. And there were very few Black kids as well. Like in my graduating class, like in my elementary, I think I was one of probably like 3 or 4 Black kids, and yeah, but I've definitely seen more diversity over the years. There's a lot more Black kids in Marshallese than other races as well, so that's been good.
And Giselle, I know you haven't grown up in Northwest Arkansas, but if you want to share who you are and where you are now, we'd love to hear it.
My name is Giselle Reddy, and I'm 12, and next year I'll be going into 7th grade. And I was born in Florida, and when I was maybe like 2 or 3, we moved to San Antonio, Texas, where I lived until I was in 4th grade, and then we moved to Arizona, which is where I currently am. And throughout my life, I've seen like everybody always wants to touch my hair, and it's kind of like you don't want them to, but I always feel bad when I kind of have to yell at people to stop touching my hair, but that's kind of my experience with it.
Well, I'm Maxine Jones, and I guess I'm the mama, and I gave Celeste instructions not to call me out. But when we moved here with our family of 3 children back in 1990, it was very much like Coletta said, a very small percentage of African Americans in the area. My husband and I prayed and made a decision based on the answer to those prayers and the leading of the Holy Spirit as to whether we would come to Northwest Arkansas after we found out, that there really weren't a whole lot of people that looked like us. But we had brought our children up to accept people as people, regardless of what race they were. Coming from Memphis, it was about 50-50 African Americans and white. So when we came here, yes, we got a lot of stares. I mean, a lot of stares everywhere we went. And it was just really, I guess at times annoying, but then at times we looked around to see what, are you really staring at us or something else? You get used to it after a while, and certainly other people get stared at too, so that was not a real biggie. Some of the things I remember though is when we came here, we put our children in a Christian school. It wasn't a safety net, but they had come from a Christian school. And so we did have a different level of we expected a little bit more from the Christian school for our children. But we didn't get that. Our children were, it was difficult for them to have children to play with and do things with. I can remember in Memphis, and even once we moved here, my daughter was invited to a birthday party, and she couldn't go. It was a little white girl, and the little white girl asked her daddy, well, why can't Coletta come to my birthday party? And he said, well, because she's Black. And and so the little girl told her dad, well, my cat's Black, and you let me play with him. And so children were being taught this from their parents. And then here, when our kids would go places, my husband might go and pick them up, and he would come across someone, and they would walk up to him and say, man, you sure have some nice Black kids. Not nice kids, but nice Black kids. And so it seemed like it was always something that was in the minds of the people that we came across, that we were Black and that we were different than them. So I worked in an area or in a profession where it was predominantly white, and I really had never thought about it because I hadn't worked with a lot of Black people in my profession. And so one of my responsibilities was to recruit for Lawrence University here. And after I came back several different trips, the glad folks would say, well, where did you go this time? And I would tell them, well, I went to Mountain Home, or I went to Clarksville, or I went somewhere. And they would tell me, girl, don't you go back there by yourself. Uh, you go back there by yourself, we might not find you forever because of what people would do. And we were told, we didn't see the sign, but we were told when we came here that there was a sign, a large sign between Fayetteville and Springdale, where the mall is, that said, no blacks allowed. So I think our experience is that we weren't looking for people to mistreat us. We had come to Memphis, and everybody pretty much stands up for themselves there. And we had people that surrounded us once we came here that also looked out for us. So some of the things that I've told you, they've shared with us that we weren't even aware were going on. And so that I'll stop there with my experience, because we all have a story, and those stories can become very long. But the good thing about it is they're true stories; they're not just made up stories.
I think you're muted, Chalessa.
Thank you, Coletta. The whole reason we're here is because of what America saw several weeks ago with the death of George Floyd. How have you sensed changes around you? For instance, after his death, there's been a lot that's happened, but how has that impacted you specifically?
Well, I've had a lot of Caucasian friends reaching out to me, sending a message, what can I do to help you? Well, first of all, how's your family doing? What can I do to help support you? What are some things I could do to, make things better? So that was kind of interesting. I certainly, was glad that they reached out, but it also put me in a place to have to think about, how do I want to respond to this situation, and how can I really help them? Because I really hadn't taken time to just process everything, because I think we all have different ways of processing. And so I knew I wanted to address the situation, but I didn't want to rush into it, and I wanted to have plenty of time to formulate my thoughts. So it took me a couple of weeks before I responded to those people that were reaching out, and was able to kind of, I think, maybe give them some ideas of how they could do, what they could do as whites to stand in this with us. But I think another thing, another friend reached out to me, and she's a leader of a nonprofit organization, and she wanted to make a statement about Black Lives Matter, and her board wouldn't let her make that statement. They were not supportive of it. And so she was kind of in the middle of, what should I do? How do I respond? Like, I still want to be part of this movement, and I feel like as an organization we should, but I'm being told that we don't need to do that. And so just processing things like that and being there for people to help them work through what they felt they needed to do was one thing that I've seen come out of this since George Floyd. And also I think I've gotten a better handle of, kind of how I feel about things and where we are and how we can move forward. So I'll probably share some of that later, but I do feel like a lot more people were reaching out and wanted to help and support, and I was able to hopefully give them some suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard of police brutality. I remember it was kind of a big thing back in 2017 and 2018. But when the George Floyd incidents came up again, it just, I feel like it really opened my eyes, because back then when I had heard of police brutality, I just I felt bad, of course, but it was just something that I kind of accepted as something that came along with being an African American in America. But seeing George Floyd made me realize that it's not only not okay and not just something that I should feel bad about, but something that's unacceptable and something that that needs to be changed. So I've also had some people reach out to me, ask what they can do. And I've signed petitions. I've seen things everywhere, people being supportive. I remember I feel like it's really big now. It's bigger than it was in 2017. And I feel like this George Floyd incident has really caused a shift. And I see more people speaking out about it than they maybe would have in earlier years.
I've had a couple people that I don't know also reach out to me, just, you know, giving their love and support and saying, like, even though we don't really know each other, I'm here for you. Like, let me know what I can do to help. I've had a lot of people say that, like, they're trying to learn more. They might not know, like, everything that's going on, or they might not have experienced it personally, but they're learning because of, like, all the Instagram posts and everything on social media. And so that's been good. I've also noticed a few people kind of do the opposite, where, like, I've had a couple friends that I've, like, grown up with and known for, like, so many years. They've, like, unfollowed me because I've been posting Black Lives Matter stuff, and so that's just kind of disappointing. And I've seen a few other people, like, say, you know, this is always going to be an issue, like, there's always going to be a race problem, so just, like, get over it. And so that's been hard. But I mean, other than that, like, I have seen a lot of positive change, which has been good.
Giselle, your mic is muted.
I've seen a lot more people saying Black Lives Matter and making statements and, like, standing up. And part of me is, like, happy, but I'm also thinking, why didn't they say that earlier? But I have seen lots of positive changes, and I've also had, like, friends from school, like, are you doing, or are you okay with all this stuff going on? And it's kind of hard for me to respond to that because I don't really know what to say, because, like, before George Floyd's death, I didn't really pay attention to a lot of this stuff. So even though I know it's not new, it was new to me. And it's kind of upsetting a little bit because I don't really want to have to answer these questions, but I feel like it's kind of my duty to have an answer for this and tell people, like, you should stick up for others and stuff like that.
Well, I tell you, since the death of George Floyd, I think that was a vivid reminder that played out and continues to play out. Anytime you want to look it up and see it again, because it's, you know, on social media. And maybe in years past, people just haven't seen with their own eyes the cruelty that's been imposed upon a race of people simply because of the color of their skin. And I think that it was so gross, so grotesque what they did to the man, that in their minds, they could not have thought of him as a human being. And I think that cuts pretty deep. It's cut pretty deep, and it's out in the open, and people cannot turn away from it. They cannot get that image out. Now, I grew up in the 60s, and in the late 60s in Mississippi, people were still being hung. And I went to a historically Black college, and I remember my dad not wanting me to go. He didn't want me to go there, but he wanted me to go to the closest college to Louisiana, which is where I grew up. And I had three full scholarships. And I said, well, Daddy, where do you want me to go? He said, well, I'd like for you to stay as close to home as possible, but I hear they're still hanging people in Mississippi. And so it was a hard decision, but I went to Lee College in Mississippi. And during the late 60s and early 70s, The Black Power movement was on campus. It was everywhere. And my parents had not taught us to hate people or dislike people of different colors, of different races, and that kind of thing. They taught us pretty much to get along with people, to show love, to show kindness, turn the other cheek. And so that's what I was used to doing. But when racism is just kind of hits you full in the face, it causes you to reflect on what your responsibilities are, what your responsibilities are as a human being to other human beings, let alone your responsibility to your race. And I think that what keeps me going and what keeps me sane with all the things that have gone on in my life is my relationship with the Lord. Because and I don't hide behind that. I don't cower behind that. I don't use that as an excuse not to express that Black lives matter. A lot of people are afraid to say that because they don't want to be put in a category. And so they don't want to focus on that statement so that change can come about and so that we never see anybody go through what George Floyd did. But they hide behind those other slogans and try to bring that up. Well, that's not at issue right now. What is at issue is what's happened in the last several weeks.
And so, as we reflect on that, why is the current racial conversation important to each of you all? Have you experienced racism? And if you have, why is now this conversation important to you?
Well, I believe we've been given this moment to do something. And, as Olivia and others have said, this is not something new that just started happening, but I believe I've been given an opportunity to see it again. And, like Mama said, it's all over the internet and social media, so you keep seeing it. And we're hearing more and more stories of police brutality and seeing racism for really what it is. And so I think we have an opportunity to do something about it now because everyone is thinking about it. It's at the forefront of people's minds. So I think we have to take this moment and use it for good and do something with it. So I think that's been a big thing, to stand up and do something and to bring about awareness and change and to help others think about it. And one thing that I like to help people think about, especially my white counterparts, is what are you doing to make the most of what's going on now? Because it really starts with one person. It starts in your home. It starts with your family. So what are you teaching your children? What are you teaching your grandchildren? Are you having people that don't look like you over for dinner in your home, one of the most intimate settings that you could have them in? Are you having coffee with people that don't look like you? And so those are the things that you teach without really thinking you're teaching. And so what message are you sending your children and your grandchildren? So my thing has always been start there, start with who you are, start with your heart, because that's what's going to eventually come out. The feelings that you harbor in your heart are going to eventually be spoken. And so however you feel about Black people is eventually going to come out. It's going to come out in a joke. It's going to come out in a comment that you make. And there's so many people now that are making comments that are coming from their heart and their racial comments, and they're not even realizing it, but other people are calling them out on the carpet and saying, hey, that was a racial, that was very derogatory towards this group of people or towards Blacks, and you need to, do something about that. You need to apologize. And we're starting to see a lot of that. And apologies are good, and, I appreciate them, but it has to be more than just an apology. That thought shouldn't even be in your heart. And if it is in your heart, there's something that we need to do about it, And so I'm hoping that more people will examine their heart and who they are. And they will also teach their children that we really all are the same. And not only do Black lives matter, but Black lives are equal, because we know that we matter, but we are equal to whites. And so that's the point that I really want people to see. And we can only be equal if we're sitting at the board table with you, if we're in the pulpit with you preaching to your congregations, if we're in the White House together, that's where we're equal. And so that's what I want people to see, that not only do our Black lives matter, but we are equal.
Coletta, do you remember any specific instances of racism?
Growing up, I know we were called, the N word several times, and I think I was sharing with Chalessa the other day that I think so many things probably happened when we grew up and moved here that I think I suppressed a lot of it because I don't even remember a whole lot of really specific situations going through junior high and high school. I do remember my brother had several instances, and I think a lot of that was because he was a male, which, I think is just different in and of itself. But so I know I've faced some, but I think a lot of it that I did suppress.
Understood. Olivia, what are your thoughts? How has this whole conversation impacted you, your thought processing, maybe your understanding of who you are?
Kind of building off of what my mom said, I think it's very important that Black and white people have this conversation about race and racism, because if we don't, then if we just turn the other cheek to what's happening, then systematic racism will continue, and white people will continue to have the advantage, and they'll continue to get the better positions, the better pay, the better education, and the Black people will continue to be at a disadvantage and therefore won't be able to move up into better professions and things like that. So I think it's very important that we have this conversation, and it's not just enough to say that you're not racist, but you have to be actively anti-racist, because if you're not actively anti-racist, you're still contributing to the problem. So I think that's another thing. And to answer the other question about, like, have I experienced anything racist? I think there's always kind of been comments growing up, people make Black jokes a lot, and they're always surprised when I say I don't really like fried chicken that much. I always peel off the skin because it's too greasy for me, and they're always so surprised by that. Like, they expect me to like fried chicken because I'm Black. And but I do remember even in the youth group, there were two Olivias in the youth group, and instead of just calling me like Olivia P, they would call me the Black Olivia. So it was always Olivia and the Black Olivia, and I was never just called like Olivia P, and I always wondered, like, why can't I just be Olivia P? Why do I have to be the Black Olivia? And there's also a time that I don't remember, but my parents have told me that when I was like 4, there was this girl that told me she couldn't play with me because I was brown. So just things like that. And I think teachers are always, I make good grades in school, and I think teachers are always surprised by that, because I think they have like this preconceived notion that Black people are lazy, or they don't like school and they don't like to work. And I think that's also something that surprises them about me. So.
Thank you, Olivia. Amelia, you're a biracial American. What has this conversation done by way of your thoughts? How has it impacted you? Has it changed anything about how you see yourself?
I guess it's changed a little bit how I see myself, but also how I see other people as well. Well, let's see. I mean, I feel like I'm half white. I mean, I am half white and I'm half Black, so part of me can relate to like everything that's been going on, but then another part of me is like, I don't know. Well, okay, no. So I feel like I've always felt like since I'm half white and half Black, I kind of like, I shouldn't have to deal with all the racism and stuff because like I'm only half, but this has showed me like it doesn't matter if you're half or whatever, like you can still get treated differently, you can still be discriminated against, and people still look at you differently. So I think that's what I've realized. For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we're younger, it's almost as if we're under a protective covering or our eyes are shielded from a lot, and we have the feeling that we're being accepted as the same. And I feel that what you're saying is true, that because we are now discussing race in this country, it's causing people's thoughts about it to be pushed to the forefront, and perhaps our understanding of how they thought about us is also being brought to light as well. I'm interested to know, what, and you, Giselle went off, but what would be our ask? What would be your ask if America needed to change? And you can answer this. Um, what would we ask for America to change? In what ways?
Well, I just watched a documentary on Netflix called 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment, which is about like prison and how they arrest people and things like that. And I think that we really need to work on our prison systems. I saw a statistic that said 1 in 3 Black men are expected to go to jail at some point in their life, while only 1 in 17 white men are expected to go to jail in their life. And the documentary also showed that Black males are targeted by the prison system, and that it's set up so that once Black men go into jail, they're set up to stay in there for very long periods of times, even for minimal crimes that some white people wouldn't even be arrested for, that they would just get a warning for. Those Black people are taken in and can stay there for years and years. So I think our prison systems and our police systems have biases, and I think that's something that we need to work on. And police too, I think there needs to be a lot more training going into the police system in terms of de-escalating situations and things like that. So yeah, because I know a lot of other countries, you need a lot more training to become a policeman than you need here in America.
Interesting. Anybody else? What are your thoughts? If America needs to change, then what would we ask and in what ways?
Like my Aunt Coletta said, a lot of the problems start, or like, no, a lot of, well, yeah, a lot of the problems, they start at home, like how you're raising your kids. So I think as we move forward, it's important for parents to teach their kids about race and say, like, it doesn't matter what you look like, everybody should be treated equally. You can play with who you want to play with, and just raise your kids to know that, like, one race does exist, like it is a thing, but that it shouldn't matter, like whether or not you're friends with people that have different races than you, like, yeah.
Why have we not talked about race openly? It seems to be a taboo subject.
It does, and I think especially in a lot of our churches, we don't talk about it. And I think the multicultural churches are trying to do better about, bringing reconciliation and unity and doing prayer walks and things like that. But I believe a lot of the, Black churches and the white churches are not probably maybe doing as much as they could to talk about those issues, to talk about race and why our congregations are not, mixed or, that kind of thing. And a lot of our pastoral leaders have not taken a stand for, that we're all equal, that Black lives matter, and being afraid to confront the situation and not wanting to ask the hard questions. And so I know in this area, one multicultural church actually brought in someone to talk about inclusion and diversity and how to respond to situations like this. And I was really pleasantly surprised that, they did that for their staff, and it may have even been open to anyone who wanted to come, but they saw the need to make sure that their staff knew this is how, how we feel about all people here in our church, and taking a stand to do that. And I think a lot of churches are kind of hoping that things blow over and die down so they really don't have to deal with the issues. And they're just hoping that things will go back to normal and how they used to be. And we can just continue to pray for each other and continue to, let's just believe for unity. And we will pray and we will believe for unity, but at some point there has to be more than just praying and believing for unity. There's action that has to accompany that. There's training that has to go into that. There's acceptance of all people that has to go along with that. So I think that would be another ask that we could have, that hopefully churches will realize that the kingdom of God includes all of God's creation and all of God's people and all these beautiful colors, and that we can truly embrace that as a church and make a stand.
And I think also we haven't had these discussions because even when you try to have those discussions in your small circles, mixed circles, and someone asks you a question about race or something involving ethnicity, when you answer them and you answer them truthfully, they get offended. And it's happened to my husband and I several times, where we had friends who wanted to know how we felt and how things could be different. And when we would engage in those conversations, invariably the feelings would be hurt. And so we backed off from discussing those things because they were not ready to hear it. They thought they were ready to hear the answer. So they take offense like you're talking about them personally. You're not talking about a person personally. This is a system that has been around since, eons of time. And to get something done about it, I agree with Coletta. It's not good enough in the church where you attend to avoid the issues. I can remember when we were in a church in Memphis and we were on staff and had been on staff for a while, and we were attending a Sunday school class, and they were talking about some Old Testament something, and there was a question posed as to why this particular person was treated that way. And we piped up, my husband and me, we piped up, well, it was because this person was dark skinned. They were black. They were, and the teacher, the facilitator, he got up in arms and, hey, we're not talking about that here, and da 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 da. And so he shut us down quick. Now, we were on staff at this church, had been on staff in this church, and we never went back to his class. But I guarantee you my husband had a discussion with him later because we never wanted to embarrass anybody before other people, but we did take a stand one-on-one and let folks know that, hey, look, you can't rewrite the Bible. You can't rewrite history. History is what it is, and a lot of it has been kept from not just Black America, but all Americans. And so people have a tendency to believe what they hear over and over again, whether it's fact or not. And most of it is not fact. And I don't know if they have willing ears to hear that. So I would say we need to remember that we're not going to win a conversation. What we're having is a discussion so that we can move from point A to point B and on, so that we can get along on this earth better, so we treat people better. And if we do those kinds of things, then we will all be better for it.
There has been a concern that this conversation, this discussion will be swept under the carpet or forgotten. How will you, and have you considered how you'll use your voice to make sure that that doesn't happen?
I think that people kind of see, well, a lot of white people in our community at least see Black Lives Matter as a trend. And even though since the George Floyd incident, I've continued to see things shared about police brutality and things like that. And I've seen more stories coming up. I feel that people are now starting to say that, oh, Black Lives Matter isn't trending anymore. And that, and they're starting to like sweep it under the rug and things are starting to go back to normal. And I think that the best way to make sure that this doesn't happen is to just continue to spread information, sign petitions, and continue to just have those difficult conversations with people, because once again, if you don't communicate, that's how things get swept under the rug. And in a book that Meemaw lended us called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? The author did an experiment with some students, and after the experiment, one of the white guys was like, he said that he saw the injustices of racism, but that he wasn't going to do anything to change that because the system was benefiting him, and he felt that he didn't want to change something that was giving him the advantage. And I feel like that's maybe how some people secretly feel, and they don't want to do anything about this, and they kind of just want to brush it off because they know that they're benefiting from this. So, and if we're finally seen as equal to white people, then they're not gonna, we're gonna have the same availability to housing and jobs and education as them. And I feel like they feel that when we go up, they're gonna go down, and they feel that when we have more opportunities, they're going to have less opportunities. So I feel like that's probably why people aren't saying anything about this issue.
Yeah, they want to fight against it. So I think, we have to continue to keep the conversations going. And I think, and we'll find that some people are going to be willing to change, willing to listen, to hear us out, and to make those changes. But I think there are going to be some people that are just so set in their ways that they don't care what you say or what you think. They're going to continue to be who they are. And so I think it's finding those people who are willing to listen and ready to make those changes from our conversations. That's where we have to spend our energy and not get so frustrated and upset with those that aren't willing to change and move forward that we just stop altogether. And so finding out who those people are who do want to embrace change and working with them to make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to think that we have to wander in the wilderness for years upon years upon years, as the Israelites did, so that those who were not ready to move into the promised land because of their lack of faith and other things, and the things that God had expressed to them were there. I would hope that we wouldn't have to wait until generations of people died so that we had new blood, so that we could have the kind of world that I envision for my children and my grandchildren. We're not going to have that as long as children are not being taught in the home to take that forward. So if they're still being taught racist things in the home, then where does that stop? I think that, and I'll reiterate what Coletta said earlier, and I know Amelia has something to say, and maybe Giselle even, but I'll reiterate what Coletta said, is that if our churches don't take a stand for those kinds of things, I don't think I need to be a part of a church like that. If they're willing to listen and have conversation, then, that's church to me. But if they're not, then I think I need to work with people who see that there are issues that need to be discussed and remedied and move forward with that.
Amelia, what else would you share? I mean, you're about to start college. You're an adult. This is your world. What else would you say to those who are listening?
I would say just continue to educate yourselves. Just because you might not have to go through what other people have to go through doesn't mean that these problems don't exist for people. I think it is important to have those hard conversations, even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if you feel like you might get judged or even, you know, disliked for it. But I think it's important that uh, you stand firm and like in your beliefs, and that if you do believe that Black Lives Matter, that you should, you know, you should stand by that and you should support that no matter what, no matter if you get unfollowed or whatever, and that you should encourage others to do the same.
Giselle, what are your thoughts?
I feel like people had gotten so used to nobody really speaking up about what Black people have to really go through, and people got so used to not having to talk about this uncomfortable stuff that when all of this George Floyd stuff happened and people started speaking out about Black Lives Matter, there were still a whole bunch of those people who were really uncomfortable with this, and some might have felt like this was uncomfortable, but they still wanted to be a part of it, and others were so uncomfortable with it that they didn't care what happened, and they were ready for things to go back to normal.
So what would you suggest to people in general, and what would you like to do?
So I would suggest that people try to have those uncomfortable conversations, even if they really don't want to, because things like this need to be said and heard if there's going to be a real change made in our country and our society.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Olivia, Coletta, Mama, Amelia, Giselle?
I feel like another thing that people could do is maybe organize more protests, because I know that when I went to protest, it made me feel empowered and supported. And I think it's just good for everyone to see all the people in their community that also believe that this injustice has been going on for far too long and that it's time for change. And I think protests are really good at not only helping to helping the community to connect with one another, but it also helps spread information, because people like post going to protest, and it just maybe if they were feeling a little wishy-washy and they went to a protest, I think that it would just really solidify the fact that Black Lives Matter. So I feel that if we organized more rallies and protests and we could really get people to attend, then that would be a good way to make people feel empowered and want to change things and to just really feel unified.
Mm-hmm. Amelia, I know you went to a protest. How did you feel being there?
Like Olivia said, I also felt really empowered. I was happy to be there. I was happy to support, and it made me feel like, I don't know, like there could be a change, or there's a possibility for change. And I think it is important that we do keep having protests, because it just makes people more aware of what's going on. So.
Mm-hmm. Coletta, any final thoughts? Or Mama, Giselle?
Giselle participated in a protest. How did you feel about that, Giselle?
It was really eye-opening to actually see all these people show up to support a cause, because I felt like it would just be the couple of Black friends that we had here in Anthem, but a lot of people showed up, and it helped me realize that some people actually did care about what was going on, and that there could be a change if people kept showing up and like speaking and having a voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point, to use the voice that we have, and we're all given different platforms and different spheres of influence. And I think it's up to each of us to use that and make the most of it, to speak what we believe and to encourage others to change. So what, if it's with our friends, if it's with our family, if it's with our coworkers, whoever, but use whatever platform we have, and then hopefully those people use the platform they have, those will use the ones they have, and eventually it continues to multiply, and then we will see like systemic change. But I think sometimes we want to start way at the top, like I'm going straight to the president and this is what needs to happen. And I'm going to tell him we need to do this and we need this law. But it's really, I think, starting where you are, because if that's not your sphere of influence and your level, you're not going to really get through, because they listen to people that are on their level and in their circle. So we have to start with the circle that we have, which may be family, it might be our coworkers, it might be people we go to church with. We start with them, and then they'll start with theirs, and eventually that will hopefully go up and filter up to the top. But I think that's how we'll start to see the broader changes that we're looking for when we kind of start where we are.
Right. We need to run for offices in our local communities, and from there on up, and whether we win or whether we lose, we're there, and we have our say in that. Garner support from the community. Of course, education is important, making sure that people are aware of what's going on, what the history is. And one thing I don't want people to feel is that every time they come around a Black person, they have to start off with, I'm sorry. Because we're two equal human beings here. And hey, let's just start off with that. My name is Maxine, what's yours? And let's go from there and treat each other with love and respect. And, because some people are uncomfortable if they feel like they have to constantly be saying, I'm sorry, and they don't even know what they're apologizing for. So just leave that out of the conversation, and let's start from that day, today, whatever day that is, to come across that person as a new relationship. And I think it's incumbent upon us that we are instruments of peace, instruments that sow knowledge, instruments that provide people with answers. We may not have all the answers, but we can resource answers. Somebody has the answer. And I think that when we have that kind of attitude, that's when we're going to grow.
Thank you, ladies. It has been wonderful having you as the guest on this particular segment. I am excited about what you've shared, and more so what people will gain from hearing your story. So thank you so very much, Coletta, Olivia, Giselle, Mama, Maxine Jones, and Amelia. This has truly been a pleasure to speak with you guys today. For those who are listening, for those who are watching, I look forward to seeing you again in another week as we continue our dialogue. But I certainly hope that you have been encouraged today hearing these ladies speak up from multiple generations about the change that can happen, the change that they're hoping will happen, and to keep the dialogue and the discussion going.